It was a typical Thursday evening when I got the call. The diner where I worked was quiet, the kind of quiet that lets you hear the ticking of the clock on the wall. I was the newbie, the rookie delivery driver, and that night, my task was to deliver a large order to a location at the edge of town. I grabbed the food, my heart light with the thought of a big tip, and set off. As I drove, the busy streets of the city gave way to the open road, then to narrower, less familiar lanes. The GPS led me through a series of turns, each one taking me further from the city's comforting lights. The night was dark, the kind of dark that seems to swallow the beams of your headlights, and a dense fog had begun to settle. I finally reached the address. It was an old house, sitting alone at the end of a gravel driveway, its presence more felt than seen in the dim light. The windows were boarded up, the garden overgrown. It didn't look like a place expecting a food delivery, but there I was, with bags of food and a growing sense of unease. I stepped out of the car, the gravel crunching under my feet. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth, and something else, something faintly metallic. I approached the front door, my footsteps sounding unnaturally loud in the silence. As I reached the porch, I noticed something odd. There were no lights on in the house, no warm glow of a living room lamp, no flicker of a TV screen, just the unyielding darkness of an abandoned place. My hand trembled slightly as I rang the doorbell. There was no response. I rang again and then knocked, the sound echoing through the empty house. I called out, announcing the food delivery, but only silence answered me. My skin prickled with the realization that I was alone, standing at the door of a house that seemed untouched by time. That's when I heard it, a faint scratching sound coming from inside the house. It was subtle, almost like the scurrying of small feet across a wooden floor. My heart started to race, and every instinct told me to turn and leave. But then there was a voice, a whisper so soft I almost missed it. "Leave the food," it said, barely audible. It didn't sound like it came from a person. It had an ethereal quality, like a breeze carrying words. I didn't want to leave the food, not there, not at the doorstep of this eerie, abandoned house. But the whisper came again, more insistent. "Leave the food." I set the bags down quickly, my hands shaking. I didn't wait, didn't look back. I practically ran to my car, the gravel flying beneath my feet. As I drove away, I didn't dare glance in the rearview mirror. The sense of being watched, of something lurking in the shadows, stayed with me until I reached the safety of the city lights. Back at the diner, I tried to explain what happened, but my words fell on skeptical ears. They joked about ghosts and overactive imaginations, but I knew what I felt, what I heard. That place wasn't right, and I never went back, not even when the same address appeared on another order. Some things, some places, are better left alone, untouched by the living. That night stayed with me, a haunting memory of an encounter at the edge of reality, a reminder that some mysteries are best left unsolved. On a dreary, rain-soaked Thursday night, I found myself behind the counter of Midnight Munchies, the local sandwich shop I worked at. It was past 10 p.m., and the night had been unusually quiet. The monotonous ticking of the clock was a stark reminder of how slowly time was passing. Just as I was about to lose myself in the lull of the silent night, the phone rang, slicing through the quiet like a knife. It was an order for delivery, 2 turkey subs with extra mayo, no onions, and a pair of sodas. The address provided was what caught my attention. It was the old Henderson house at the edge of town. a place wrapped in rumors and an unsettling aura. The Henderson house was infamous in our small town, shrouded in tales of tragedy and ghostly whispers. I had heard stories about it since I was a kid, stories that made the bravest of us dare not venture near it, especially after dark. But there I was, a 20-year-old delivery guy, about to step into a chapter of our town's living ghost story. I grabbed the sandwich bag, feeling a mix of curiosity and apprehension, and headed out into the rainy night. As I drove, the empty streets were illuminated only by the occasional streetlight, flickering as if hesitating to reveal what lay in the darkness. The journey to the Henderson house felt longer than it actually was. Each turn and twist in the road seemed to carry a silent warning, a whisper telling me to turn back. But the allure of the unknown, the part of me that wanted to see if the stories were true, kept me going. Finally, I reached Henderson Street. The sight of the house sent a chill down my spine. It stood there, a relic of a bygone era, its once grand structure now succumbing to the ravages of time and neglect. The garden was overgrown, the gate creaked on its hinges, and the windows stared blankly, like hollow eyes of a long-forgotten soul. I hesitated for a moment before stepping out of the car, the rain now a gentle drizzle, as if nature itself was holding its breath. I walked up to the front door, the sound of my footsteps muffled by the wet ground. A sense of unease grew with every step. I rang the doorbell, its echoes seemingly swallowed by the house. No response. My second attempt was met with the same silence. Just as I was about to leave the order on the doorstep and retreat, a voice crackled through an intercom I hadn't noticed before. "Leave the food on the step. The money's in the mailbox," it said, a raspy, unused voice that seemed to come from another time. I did as instructed, feeling a strange relief at not having to encounter whoever or whatever was inside. The mailbox, rusted and ancient, held the exact change and a $5 tip. I remember pausing for a second, wondering about the person behind the voice. As I turned to leave, the voice spoke again, softer this time. "Stay safe out there." The words lingered in the air, a whisper against the backdrop of the night. I hurried back to my car, not daring to look back at the house. The drive back was a blur, my mind racing with thoughts of the Henderson house and its unseen inhabitant. The encounter left me with more questions than answers. Was it just an old recluse living in a house filled with memories, or was there something more, something left unsaid in the whispers of the night? Over the next few days, I couldn't shake off the feeling of that night. I shared the story with my coworkers, who brushed it off as just another eccentric customer. But to me, it felt different. It was as if I had touched a part of our town's history, a living piece of the folklore I had grown up hearing about. Weeks passed, and the memory of that night began to fade, tucked away in the back of my mind as just another strange encounter in the life of the late-night food delivery guy. But sometimes, when I drive past the Henderson Street, a chill runs down my spine, and I can't help but wonder about the unseen customer. What stories could they tell? What secrets did that old house hold? In the quiet of the night, when the world is asleep, and it's just me and the road, I often think back to that voice. "Stay safe out there," it had said. In those words, there was a warning, the hint of a life lived. I've been a pizza delivery driver in the city for a couple of years. It's a job that suits me. The freedom of the open road, the city lights guiding my way. But there was this one night, a night that felt different right from the start. The streets were quieter than usual. The air had a chill that went beyond the weather. My shift started like any other, delivering orders across the city. But then, I noticed it. A dark sit-in. At first, it was just a car among many, but something about it caught my eye. It was there, at my first stop, and then again at the third. Probably just a coincidence, I thought. As the night went on, that car kept appearing. It was subtle at first, a fleeting glimpse in my rearview mirror, but with each delivery, my unease grew. The same car, always a block or two behind, always keeping pace. A coincidence was turning into something more sinister. I tried to tell myself I was imagining things, but deep down, I knew. This wasn't just some random car. It was following me. With every turn, every stop, the fear grew. What did they want? Why were they after me? My heart started racing, thoughts swirling in panic. I turned down a street, trying to lose them, only to find myself at a dead end. My headlights illuminated the stark, empty road ahead. I looked in my rearview mirror, and there it was, the Satan, blocking my way back. I was trapped, my only companion the pounding of my heart. I sat there, frozen, as the driver of the Satan got out. The street was silent, save for the distant hum of the city. There was a moment of confrontation, a standoff that felt like an eternity. I was ready to flee, to fight, to do whatever it took. I don't know how, but I found an opening. With a burst of adrenaline, I maneuvered my way out, leaving the Satan and its mysterious driver behind. As I drove away, my heart still racing, I felt a mix of relief and disbelief. I had escaped, but the fear lingered. The rest of the night was a blur. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see that car again. It never reappeared, but something inside me had changed. The city streets, once familiar and comforting, now felt unpredictable, shadowed with the memory of that night. That experience stayed with me. Every time I head out for a delivery, I can't help but remember the night when the ordinary turned into a brush with the unknown. It's a reminder that in the city, under the cover of night, anything can happen.